Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagbin has cautioned members of Parliament their immunity as contained in Articles 117 and 118 of the Constitution are not absolute. He says the Constitution allows the courts to serve court processes on MPs who are not attending to the business of Parliament. In a formal communication to MPs earlier today, Mr. Bagbin disclosed it has come to his attention that some MPs during recess, when they were not engaged in business of the House, evaded attempts by court officials to serve processes on them. He says that should not be the case and is calling for mutual respect between the legislature and the judiciary.
Honourable members, I urge you all to accord the members of the judiciary and the judicial service the utmost respect, decency, and decorum they deserve. It has taken a long period of history. It has taken experiential learning, which was full of lessons and effort to achieve a cordial and harmonious relationship between the judiciary and the legislature. We should not treasure that cordial relationship. We should treasure that cordial relationship and desist from jeopardizing it with actions or inactions which are not well thought through. And the last, I trust that this statement provides a guide to ensure that these peculiar rights enjoyed by the House collectively and by members individually, as stated in the Constitution, are respected and due care is taken not to impede or obstruct the administration of justice in the Republic. Judges and judicial officers must be free to administer justice without let or hindrance, ill will or affection. I want to thank honorable members for your attention, but I have taken time to state these principles in consultation with the judiciary. And I want this to be given the highest publication for the guidance of the public, and particularly the police service, as to how to conduct their activities when it comes to members of Parliament. As I sit here, I gathered information that some members were arrested, were prosecuted, and they are before court without any notice to the Speaker. This cannot continue. Even when a member is alleged to have committed an offense and being investigated, the Speaker must be given notice. Because some of the rights that we have are termed immunities, and those immunities are absolute. For example, in Parliament here, during the course of plenary, whatever you say here is absolutely protected by law.
Well, let's go to Parliament. My colleague Joseph Opoku-Gakpo is joining us with more of what's been happening in the House. Joseph, let's begin with what really necessitated this statement by the Speaker.
Gifty, from the explanation that Speaker Alban Bagbin gives, he says that earlier in the year, his attention was drawn to what he sees as a breach of constitutional provisions when it comes to the protection of members of Parliament, in specific reference to Articles 117 and 118 of the Constitution, which is quite categorical that when it comes to situations having to do with court processes that should be served on members of parliament, that provision in Article 117 is emphatic that civil or criminal processes coming from any court or out of parliament shall not be served on or executed in relation to the Speaker of Parliament or the Clerk of Parliament while he's on his way to attending at or returning from any proceedings of Parliament. He says that he had observed that this constitutional provision had been breached repeatedly, and some MPs are standing trial in court when the Speaker's office is unaware, and the police are prosecuting some members of Parliament when the Speaker is unaware. And so he explains in this formal communication he gave members of Parliament earlier today that back in February, he wrote specifically to the Chief Justice expressing that concern and demanding an end to what he said was the breach of the Constitution. And he explains that the judiciary, in response to his letter, admitted that there's been situations that various court officials had not acted appropriately. And so then a conversation began between the judiciary and the executive to remedy this particular situation. And as a result of that, he's come out with an 11-point guideline, which was actually drawn in collaboration with the judiciary on how any court processes involving members of parliament should actually be undertaken. And so he took advantage of today's sitting to then read out that said guideline to members of parliament, which he says the judiciary is now aware of and they will be complying with going forward. So out of the blues, he just indicated that he had a formal communication that he needed to deliver to members of parliament, and then he went ahead to read that particular communication.
So Joseph, he talks about what he heard recently about some members of parliament who have been arrested, but do we know who these members of parliament are? Does he give any indication, or do we have an idea who falls within this particular category?
And so, Gifty, this is actually a directive that mainly covers the court if they would want to serve processes on members of parliament, the clerk of parliament, or the speaker himself. And let me just go through the specifics of what the speaker says should be the way forward now. He makes the point that when parliament is in session, there is actually the presumption that normal business is happening. And so any time when parliament has not gone on recess or break, you can't serve any court processes on a member of parliament or the speaker or the clerk of parliament without first seeking the express permission of the speaker. Again, when we have a situation where a member of parliament is coming to parliament, you can't serve the said processes on him without recourse to the speaker. Now, when parliament is on recess, then you can't go ahead and the communication now says that when parliament is on recess or the house is on break, you can serve processes on him once he is actually not involved in any committee meeting or he is not on the premises of parliament. That's the other indication that's coming from the speaker. And then the speaker then goes on to say that where a member is attending to business of parliament, such as committee meetings or activity during the recess period, and the member is served with any court processes, he is supposed to direct those processes to the speaker. He's not supposed to deal with it himself. And then the speaker goes on to then explain that even beyond that, when eventually the said member of parliament enters a response to whatever service, then we would have the situation where the case has begun, and so all these immunities have been waged. So that's the explanation that the speaker has been giving members of parliament today, and he's been urging them to respect those processes so that then there is no tension between the courts and parliament as an institution.
Well, Joseph, the minority in parliament have also been speaking. They're urging the Chief Justice to reconsider his referral of Bolgatanga East MP Dr. Dominic Ayene to the General Legal Council. We know that they've been addressing a press briefing in Parliament House. Joseph, let's hear them, and then I'll come to you and we wrap it up from there.